Every time I walk past Bembelman's bakery, I see the same thing. Lines. This Bembelman must be a great baker.
That bread he makes is mostly luck, mister. Let me tell you.
What do you mean, luck? He must be a genius.
Listen, there's a story behind this Bembelman. I come from the same village in the old country, and I know. It all began long ago, when we both were little boys. Aaron Bembelman, the baker's father, was a hard worker. He was a brickmaker who made bricks 18 hours a day. His wife, Sarah Bembelman, worked just as hard at home. They lived in a poor little house with hardly room enough for their 7 children, and they were a handful. One day in late summer, Sarah had to go to the market to buy food for the harvest holiday, which was coming up. She said to her oldest boy, Saul,
"Saul, you watch the other children while I'm gone, and don't get into trouble. Better yet, don't even leave the house. I'll be home in 2 hours."
After Sarah went out, one of the children said, "Saul, I'm hungry, and there's no bread in the house." Saul thought for a moment. "Then let's make some. We'll bake enough bread for today and the holidays too. Mama will be so surprised." "Yes, yes, let's make bread," they all shouted. "But how do we do it?" said the youngest. "I think Mama uses 1 handful of yeast," said Saul. "But my hand is smaller than her hand, so I'll put in 4 handsful of yeast. And she uses 6 handfuls of flour." "Are you sure?" asked Rachel. "Yes," said Saul. "But my hand is smaller than her hand, so I will put in more." Then each of the children threw in a handful of this and a handful of that and mixed it all together. What a sight! Every Bembelman covered with flour and sticky with dough. But finally, with a lot of pushing and pulling, they got their mixture into the oven. The dough began to rise and rise and rise some more. Soon it pushed out the oven door. When it reached the walls, it began to push out the windows. It was then the children got scared. "What will happen when Mama comes home?" they cried. So 2 hid under the bed. 1 squeezed under the table. 1 sneaked into the closet. The other 2 sat huddled together in the far corner. Saul stood by the door, trembling. Bread was bulging everywhere, inside and outside. Rebecca Bergstein, the town gossip ever since she was 3 years old, ran to the marketplace, yelling to Sarah Bembelman,
"Oh, if you could see what your kids did to your house."
"What? What have they done to my house?"
"You wouldn't believe me. You'll have to come see for yourself."
Well, to make a long story short, there was yelling, and there was screaming, and there was praying to the Lord Almighty, and Sarah Bembelman fainted 3 or 4 times when she saw the house.
"Where are the children?"
"They're all hiding," said Saul, peering out the front door.
"When your father gets home, tired and hungry as he is, exhausted from his long day's work, he'll take each of you and teach you a lesson you'll never forget."
As soon as Saul heard this, he ran to the woods to hide. When Aaron Bembelman came home, the crowd parted to let him through. He sat down at his dining room table. For a full 15 minutes, he just stared in stony silence. Sarah wept quietly in the corner. And finally, Aaron lifted his head and said,
"So, where is dinner, Sarah?"
Sarah began to cry louder, and through her tears she said,
"I can't get near the stove. It is filled with bread."
Aaron sat silently for another 5 minutes. Then he said,
"So, cut a piece of the bread."
The crowd peered through the dining room window. Sarah gave Aaron a piece. Aaron took a bite. He chewed it slowly, and then he smiled. He took another bite, and his smile grew wider. He ate some more, and he began to laugh. Soon he was singing and smacking his lips and dancing as he shouted,
"Sarah, bring me more bread. This is not just bread, it's meat and potatoes. It's strudel and pie. It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner all at once. It's apples and raisins, vodka and noodles, every taste you ever wanted to taste, all in each wonderful bite."
The neighbors began crowding into the Bembelman's house. The bread was so good they fought to taste it. Soon Sarah began cutting off pieces the size of loaves so they could take some home. The Bembelman children even crept out of their hiding places to taste the bread. Long after every crumb was gone, the neighbors were still coming back, begging for more. Sarah told them she'd have more by tomorrow. Then she went to the woods to find Saul.
"Solly, my darling, Mama won't hit you. Tell me how you made the bread."
There was a long silence. Then from somewhere in the woods came a voice. "Well, you take 10 handsful of flour and 4 handsful of yeast." So the Bembelmans soon sold enough bread to come to America and open their bakery. And even now, nobody can bake bread like theirs. Who can copy a recipe that's measured by the hand sizes of Bembelman children? So come on, let's get in line and buy a loaf.
Why not wait until the line gets shorter?
It never gets shorter, believe me. Besides, I promised my grandchildren I'd bring them a bread from Bembelman's bakery, and I'd better not come home without